You freeze. As soon as you walk outside, your face freezes. You can really feel it. You can hear the snow crunching underneath your feet.
It stings. It really hurts. And unless you experience it, that's all I can say.
If you're out in the cold for an extended period of time, like somebody who's homeless, is once it freezes, the pain goes away.
Lukie Karpik was 35. He loved roofing, the outdoors, and his mom, Matilda.
I guess you could say we're ahead of so young. We grew up together and we learned a lot from each other. He always smiled, and if I was sad, he always made me happy. He's just a good son.
Karpik had trouble finding stability in his life, and he struggled with alcohol.
Just because
Those struggles led him to Jefta Obed years ago at the now shuttered Newman boarding house where the two became friends.
he was very kind and very generous, very energetic.
Before he died, Lukie Karpik was staying at the Housing Hub, the only official shelter in town. Temperatures dropped to nearly -20 overnight on December 7th. While people slept inside, Karpik laid out here, just 30 meters from the shelter. When he was discovered in the morning, he was taken to hospital, where resuscitation efforts failed.
I can't tell you why he was outside. I can tell you that he didn't come to the shelter that night. He never came to the door of the shelter. We've gone back through all of the video footage to make sure that was the case.
For Karpik's mother and stepfather, the timing makes it more painful. That very same day, the phone rang with what would have been good news.
It was Lloyd who answered, and he said, "It's too late, Leela." He told me it was too late because Lukie had died. They had found him froze to death, right? And that's a huge hardship that we have to deal with. When you look
Leela Evans was helping Lukie get a job at Voisey's Bay. Employment and shelter, life-saving tools just out of his grasp.
He was a very friendly, outgoing, kind individual who unfortunately had some substance use issues, and that created other issues for him.
Karpik's family believes he was outside drinking that night. Kinney says staff at the shelter were told the same thing. The family wonders what might have been different if shelter staff monitored activity outside its doors. Kinney says the shelter doesn't have the resources for that.
Ultimately, we're dealing with adults, and they can come and go from the shelter as they choose. And we can't guarantee their safety outside of the shelter.
Lukie Karpik was not the first, and as of January 19th, was not the last person experiencing homelessness to die in the Labrador cold. Statistics from the Newfoundland and Labrador Housing Corporation show even though just 1.6% of the province's population is in Happy Valley Goose Bay, the town makes up 11% of the province's total shelter users. The Housing Hub has 8 beds, but can take more if there's an emergency, like freezing temperatures. And since 2020, this hotel has become Labrador's largest unofficial shelter, an overflow site, routinely taking 20 people a night. One of those people is Michael Joy. For 25 years, he's been homeless. Usually he lives in the woods, but this winter he's been at the inn, living and working, waking early to shovel out the entrances. But there's one spot he can no longer bear to shovel out.
As I was getting down on the bottom of the ramp, I looked down towards the road and I seen something black. As I got closer to it, it was a jacket. As I was picking up the jacket and I turned to my left, there she was.
It was 28-year-old Frederica Benuin from Natwashish, an Innu woman who is living at the Labrador Inn with her boyfriend, the second person to die alone in the cold just 6 weeks apart.
She was the kind of person that never gave up. She was easy to get along with, and she was a very lovable person.
Nui says Benuin would visit her at the band council office and spoke of dreams of traveling the world and getting a good job.
It broke my heart when I found out her body was found outside of the hotel. And, it made me question as well, what really happened to her.
This is where Frederica Benuin succumbed to the cold. Warmth, safety just in her sightline, but out of reach. CBC News has reviewed footage from the surveillance camera here at the Labrador Inn. It shows Benuin and 3 men, including her boyfriend, drinking outside on the evening of her death. Eventually, Benuin is the only one remaining outside. It appears she goes unconscious near a snowbank. That night and morning, the temperatures plummeted, all the way to -29 with the wind chill. This was an unused entrance, and the bar has been closed because of the pandemic. Benuin was out of sight from the front desk cameras and from the front entrance itself. The RCMP has concluded its investigation into the death of Lukie Karpik, but the case of Frederica Benuin remains open. The question of what support programs may have failed them and the others that preceded them is a complicated one.
I don't know that we can point our finger at any one group. I think it's a child welfare issue. I think it's a justice issue. I think it's a women's issue in some cases. It's a health issue, a mental health issue. I just think it's a lack of resources and integration of services that haven't been wrapped around individuals early enough in their lives.
Certainly my pleasure to be here today.
Last week, a funding announcement from the province and the feds, $300,000 for a new position at the hub and to assess needs in the homeless community. And now, more than 2 months after the first death, a firm commitment from the minister responsible for housing.
If it's an issue of resources, then we have to make those resources available. And that's really what I'm committed to, so that we make the change to make sure it doesn't, to the degree we can achieve that this situation does not happen again.
And asked why it's taken 2 years to provide in-house support to the Labrador Inn.
Well, I think that's one of the, again, as the minister said, this is the thing that we've learned, that, we just can't let that continue to happen. So I'm certainly convinced that it shouldn't and it won't on a go-forward basis.
The Minister of Labrador Affairs and Indigenous Affairs and Reconciliation says deaths may be inevitable.
This is difficult to say, but I believe that the complexities of the issue we're dealing with, no matter how many supports we have in place, no matter how much money we invest into supportive housing, wraparound supports, there may always be some of those situations.
He would support a lot of people with the money that he...
Back in St. John's, Jefta Obed is glad the Goose Bay Woods and homeless shelter is a story from his past. He hopes other friends don't face the same fate as Lukie.
The world did lose a great person. He was a very good role model. A lot of people are going to miss him.
Lukie Karpik, not the first nor the last, but one whose death, along with Frederica Benuin's, led to promises of change. Now to see if that change happens. Ariana Kelland, CBC News, Happy Valley Goose Bay.